Hello, welcome to Return to Life. Today, we will listen to a story about the cracks in life where people have felt weak, full of doubt, yet kept moving forward. If you are standing between exhaustion and hope, this story may be for you.
Eleanor never slept past 6 a.m., not even on weekends. Her phone alarm always rang at 5:45, and by 5:47 she was already scanning emails, eyes half open, thumb trained by habit. It had become a part of her, like breathing, but louder and faster. She once joked with a coworker that she checked her inbox more than she checked her pulse. It wasn't a joke. That morning felt no different. Her apartment was quiet, sterile almost, the silence broken only by the soft clink of her glass coffee mug and the buzz of the electric toothbrush. She walked into the bathroom, phone still in hand, half reading a Slack message, half brushing her teeth, and that's when she saw it. The mirror didn't lie. A small red bump had settled itself neatly at the tip of her nose, glowing faintly like a warning light. She paused, lowered the toothbrush, leaned in. It wasn't big, it wasn't painful, but it was red, angry red, an attention-seeking kind of red, the kind that made people glance twice. It hadn't been there last night. Eleanor turned her head left, then right. The bump followed her every move. She tapped the skin gently, tender, a little warm, a little wrong. She exhaled sharply. Of course, she muttered, more to the mirror than to herself. Probably stress, or that spicy ramen I had at midnight. She rinsed her face quickly, dabbed concealer over the spot with the efficiency of a seasoned beauty triage nurse, and moved on. There was no time to overthink a pimple, not when she had back-to-back meetings starting at 7:30. Her calendar was already full, just the way she liked it. Full meant progress. Full meant productivity. Full meant she didn't have to think about anything else, especially not herself. Eleanor, at 28, was the youngest project lead in her department. She had a plaque, a bonus check, and a boss who once called her a machine in heels, which she had taken as a compliment. She lived off protein bars, oat milk lattes, and adrenaline. Sleep was optional. Silence was suspicious. Her apartment looked more like a WeWork lobby than a home. Neutral colors, ergonomic furniture, LED lights set to focus mode. The only personal touch was a framed quote by Elon Musk on her desk: "Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in 80 to 100-hour weeks every week." She read it every morning like scripture, but behind the crisp blouse and color-coded Trello boards, there were things Eleanor didn't talk about, like how her chest sometimes tightened for no reason, how her face flushed when she climbed stairs even slowly, how she had to take deep breaths before entering meetings, not because she was nervous, but because her body seemed to be asking for oxygen she forgot to give, or how, once during a group yoga class her friend had dragged her to, she nearly blacked out during a downward dog and blamed it on skipping lunch. She hadn't gone back since. Still, a pimple was just a pimple. She had dealt with worse. In college, she used to get cystic breakouts during finals week, and wore them like badges of honor. "If your face isn't freaking out," she used to say, "you're not working hard enough." But something about this one made her pause. It wasn't just the color, it was its location, right on the nose, dead center, like it wanted to be seen. Her phone buzzed. She jumped a little. New email, a task overdue. She refocused, straightened her posture, and pushed the odd feeling to the back of her mind. She didn't have time to worry about a spot on her face, not when there were deadlines to crush, milestones to reach, promotions to earn. Besides, if it got worse, she could always slap on more concealer. Maybe order a new cream. She'd seen one on Instagram last night with 12,000 five-star reviews. She'd figure it out later. She always did. Eleanor had never thought of herself as someone who needed a break. Rest was a reward, not a right, and only granted once the job was done. The problem was, the job was never really done. That morning, just like every other, her day began before the sun had a chance to rise. Her to-do list was already in motion before her feet even touched the floor. Meetings, emails, deliverables, revisions, follow-ups, feedback requests. Her brain, like her calendar, left no room for hesitation. The pimple on her nose? She'd already forgotten it, kind of. In truth, it kept tugging at the edge of her focus like a stray thread on a sweater. It didn't hurt, not exactly, but it was there, present, in the mirror, in the reflection of her laptop screen, in the blurred outline of her phone's front-facing camera when she opened Zoom. It pulsed, not physically but psychologically. Still, she pressed on, Her first meeting started at 7:30. She had a protein bar in one hand, iced coffee in the other, and 3 tabs open for her presentation slides. By 8:15, she'd already taken notes on a client call, responded to 6 emails, and added 4 new tasks to her list. She was efficient. Relentlessly so. People envied her for it. But with that efficiency came habits, some subtle, some not, that she never stopped to question. One of them, deeply ingrained, was picking at her skin. It had started years ago in college during finals week. At first, it was subconscious, a press of the thumb here, a scratch there. But over time, it became ritualistic, a form of release, stress relief disguised as self-maintenance. Her fingers found their way to the bump on her nose around 9:43 a.m., during a slow-loading screen and an awkward silence in a video call. At first, it was just a touch, then a press, then a slight pinch. She winced, not because it hurt, because it didn't give. Not ready yet, she muttered under her breath, annoyed. By lunchtime, if you could call 2:15 p.m. and half a bag of almonds lunch, the bump looked angrier, redder. Eleanor dabbed on another layer of concealer. She didn't have time to look into it. Her next meeting was already starting. The day blurred, like they always did. Calls turned into backlogs. Tasks multiplied like rabbits. Slack pings never stopped. Somewhere in between, she did a quick online search. Pimple won't go away, red nose. The top results were all beauty blogs, acne tips, skincare routines. She bookmarked one that mentioned a tea tree oil serum and promised to come back to it. By evening, her face felt warm, not feverish, just flushed. She chalked it up to the lights in her apartment, the blue light from her screen, maybe a little wine from last night. She massaged her temples, then went back to replying to 3 more emails. That night, while brushing her teeth, she leaned into the mirror again. The bump hadn't grown, but it hadn't shrunk either. It still glared back at her, defiant. The redness had spread slightly along the tip of her nose. For a moment, she wondered, could this be something else? But then she shook the thought away. She remembered the last time she tried to see a dermatologist. It took her 3 weeks to get an appointment, and even then, the doctor spent less than 10 minutes with her, prescribed a cream not covered by insurance, and told her to reduce stress, as if stress was a light switch. No, she didn't have time for another round of that. She had work, she had people depending on her. A project timeline was already slipping by a week, and she hadn't even told her manager yet. She needed to stay sharp, stay in control. Keep moving. The pimple could wait. She opened her bathroom drawer, found an old acne spot treatment, and applied a thin layer. The sting made her feel like she was doing something productive. That night, she fell asleep with her phone in her hand, Slack still open, and unread notifications climbing silently. And yet, somewhere just beneath the hum of her brain, her body whispered things she refused to hear. A tightness in her chest that came and went, a racing heart when she climbed stairs, or sometimes even when she just stood up too quickly. A flush in her face when she argued, even mildly. She'd written it all off. Too much caffeine, hormones, anxiety, normal things, manageable things. Everyone felt this way, didn't they? She was young, healthy, active-ish. She ate salad twice last week. The mirror didn't answer, only the pimple did, staring back unblinking. By the 3rd morning, the pimple hadn't changed. If anything, it looked worse. The redness had deepened, spreading subtly beyond the original bump like a blot of ink on paper. Eleanor leaned in closer, trying not to flinch. The skin felt warmer than the rest of her face, tender to the touch. Still not painful, just off. She covered it up, of course. Foundation, concealer, setting spray. She had her routine down to a science. But underneath it all, she could feel it. A strange awareness, as if the tip of her nose had become its own separate temperature zone. By 10 a.m., she'd already attended 2 meetings, rewritten part of a slide deck, and ordered lunch she probably wouldn't eat. But something gnawed at her, not just the pimple, but the way her body felt that day. A tightness in her chest. A slight flutter just beneath her collarbone when she stood up too fast. She brushed it off. Maybe too much coffee, maybe not enough water, maybe anxiety. An hour later, she caught her reflection in a Zoom call. The lighting was harsh, and her webcam had a way of exaggerating everything. Her nose looked red, not just the pimple, her whole nose. A slight flush across the skin. She quickly adjusted the lighting filter, but her hand hovered over her face longer than necessary. Maybe she was being paranoid, or maybe not. She clicked out of the meeting and, for the first time in months, opened the patient portal of her health insurance app. She hadn't used it since last year's flu shot. She scrolled through her options: primary care, dermatology, urgent care. She selected general concern and searched for appointments, soonest available, 14 days from now. She stared at the screen. 2 weeks. It felt absurd. She wasn't bleeding, she wasn't fainting, but she didn't feel right either. She hovered over the book button, then she closed the tab, back to work. A few hours later, she climbed the stairs to her apartment because the elevator was out again. 3 flights, not a big deal. But halfway up the second flight, she had to stop. Her heart was pounding, not like after a run, but unevenly. Not fast, just strange. Like her heartbeat had missed a step, then doubled back to catch up. She grabbed the railing, stayed still, and waited. It passed. She didn't tell anyone. She hadn't told anyone about the weird muscle spasms in her eyelid last week, or how she sometimes felt winded after doing nothing, or how her palms had been sweating at night lately. They were all probably connected. Or maybe not. She told herself what she always did. It's fine. Everyone's tired. Everyone's body does weird things under pressure. Besides, if she went to a doctor now, they'd probably run a bunch of unnecessary tests, find nothing, and send her a bill bigger than her rent. The last time she tried to get an MRI for persistent migraines, the out-of-pocket cost, even with insurance, was $1,300. She'd canceled the scan and picked up a bottle of Excedrin instead. That pimple on her nose? She could fix it with ice and time, probably. Later that night, she sat on her couch, laptop on her knees, staring blankly at a spreadsheet. She hadn't moved in over an hour. Her shoulders ached, her temples throbbed, and through the haze of blue light and exhaustion, she felt the skin on her face again, still hot, not burning, not alarming. Just enough to remind her something was different. She opened her browser and searched nose redness, circulation, heart stress. The top result surprised her. It wasn't a beauty blog or Reddit thread. It was a medical article, brief but technical. It explained how the nose, especially the tip, is rich in capillaries and sensitive to changes in blood flow. Facial flushing, persistent redness, or inflammatory bumps could, in some cases, be early signs of systemic issues, particularly related to circulation, blood pressure, or hormonal stress responses. She blinked, then scrolled to the comments, hoping for something more reassuring. The top one read, "I ignored symptoms like this for months. Thought it was rosacea. Turned out I had early signs of hypertension. I was 29. She exhaled sharply. She didn't want to spiral. She hated the idea of self-diagnosing on the internet, but she bookmarked the page anyway. Then she did what she always did. She opened Instagram, scrolled mindlessly, found a skincare reel promoting a miracle calming balm for irritated skin. Sold out. Waitlist only. She signed up. By the time she crawled into bed, it was close to midnight. Her face throbbed slightly against the pillow. Her heart didn't race, but it didn't rest either. She stared at the ceiling. She thought about the appointment she didn't book. She thought about her nose, red and wrong. She thought about the way she had brushed off every whisper from her body. Then she closed her eyes and pretended she was fine, because fine was easier. The call had started like any other. High stakes, high pressure, and high expectations. Eleanor had spent 2 days preparing for this pitch. The client was based in Chicago, a fintech startup looking for a long-term partner. Her manager trusted her to lead the meeting, to carry the brand on her shoulders like she always did. She wore her best blazer, the navy one with the sharp lapels. Her makeup was light but precise. The redness on her nose was still there, but layered under foundation and camera filters, it barely showed. She looked calm, capable, perfect, except for the pounding in her chest. It started slow. A faint pulse beneath her ribs, just slightly off beat. Nothing dramatic. She thought it was just adrenaline. After all, this deal mattered. But as she launched into the presentation, something shifted. Her vision blurred at the edges. Not black, just hazy. Like the air around her was thickening. She blinked hard. Her voice wavered. She clicked to the next slide. The client asked a question. Eleanor heard it but couldn't focus on the words. Her ears were ringing. Her palms damp. She swallowed. "Just give me 1 second," she said, forcing a smile and turning off her camera. She stood up from her chair. The room tilted. And then, nothing. The next thing she knew, she was lying flat, cold plastic pressing into her back. Bright lights overhead. A rhythmic beeping. Motion. She was in an ambulance. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" She turned her head toward the voice. A man in navy scrubs hovered above her, his tone professional but rushed. "What's your name?" he asked. She blinked. "Eleanor." "Do you know what day it is?" "Tuesday," she said, her voice dry. "I think. Do you have any known heart conditions?" "No." He scribbled something on a clipboard. Another paramedic inserted an 4 into her arm. "What happened?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You fainted during a video call. Your coworker called 911. They said you were unresponsive for about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 whole minutes." Her mind reeled. Had she hit her head? Did she say anything? Did she cry? "I was just standing," she whispered. "Sometimes that's all it takes," he said without looking up. They didn't ask her about the redness on her nose. They didn't ask if she'd been feeling off for days. They didn't ask about the chest flutters or the stares or the sweat at night. They asked about allergies, about prescriptions, about family history. None of it felt connected. By the time she reached the ER, she had more wires on her than she could count. A nurse took her vitals. A doctor came in briefly. Mid-30s, fast-talking, polite in a rehearsed kind of way. "You likely experienced a vasovagal episode," he explained. "Stress, dehydration, low blood sugar. Very common. You're young, fit, no pre-existing conditions. Nothing alarming on your EKG." He smiled as if that was comforting. Eleanor nodded, trying to be agreeable. But something inside her wanted to scream. This wasn't normal. This wasn't fine. She opened her mouth. "I've also had this red spot on my nose for a few days. It's been hot, kind of swollen, and—" The doctor waved a hand dismissively. "Probably unrelated. Local inflammation. Use a warm compress, maybe see a dermatologist if it persists." And just like that, he was gone. No one stayed long. No one asked about the whole picture. By late afternoon, she was discharged with a generic handout about stress and hydration. The nurse handed it to her without looking up. She took an Uber home, sat silently in the back seat, forehead pressed against the cold window. At home, everything looked the same. Laptop still open, coffee cup half full. Her blazer draped neatly over the back of her chair, like a ghost waiting to be worn again. But she wasn't the same. She walked to the mirror. The bump on her nose had not gone away. If anything, it looked darker. The skin around it, more flushed. She stared at her own reflection, searching for something that would make sense of the day. She had fainted, in front of coworkers. In the middle of a major presentation, she had ended up in an ambulance, hooked to machines, examined and dismissed. And now she was here, alone, staring at a red spot that no one thought mattered. Was this the moment, the breaking point, the edge of burnout no one ever described accurately? She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just stood there, quietly, as a single thought floated to the surface. You are not in control. The apartment was exactly as she had left it, untouched, indifferent, oblivious. The curtains hung just slightly ajar, letting in a streak of late afternoon light that sliced through the living room like a quiet accusation. Eleanor stepped inside and shut the door behind her. No notifications. No buzzing. Her phone had died on the way home, and for once she didn't reach for the charger. She didn't know what to do, not in the grand sense. She knew she was supposed to rest. Drink fluids. Monitor for dizziness. Maybe follow up with her doctor, if she ever decided to book that appointment. But in this moment, in this silence, she didn't know how to exist. Her laptop sat open on the table, screen dark, Slack still active. Her inbox no doubt overflowing. She walked past it. Instead, she sat on the couch and stared at nothing. For a long time. She didn't check the time. She didn't check the news. She didn't even check her reflection. It took over an hour before she stood up, walked to the bathroom, and looked in the mirror. The redness on her nose was still there, but now she looked at it differently. Not as a blemish. Not as an imperfection, but as a question. What had her body been trying to say? She went back to the living room, pulled out a notebook she hadn't used in months, and sat down with a pen. No filters, no apps, no calendar slots. Just this, what has my body been telling me? She listed them slowly. Redness on nose, chest fluttering, sweating at night. Dizziness on stairs, shortness of breath, eye twitching, cold hands, racing thoughts, tired eyes, shoulder pain, tension headaches, jaw clenching, skin breakouts, forgetting words mid-sentence. She stared at the list, horrified, not because any one symptom seemed severe, but because they had all happened, and she had ignored every single one of them. Noted, minimized, dismissed. She reached for her tablet and began to search, this time, not for a product, not for a solution in a bottle, but for understanding. She searched connection between skin and heart, stress and circulation. Why does my nose get red when I'm overwhelmed? The results came fast. She read slowly. The nose, she learned, is densely packed with tiny blood vessels, capillaries that respond instantly to stress, temperature, and blood pressure. The tip of the nose is particularly sensitive to vascular changes. When the heart is under strain, even subtly, those changes can show up as facial flushing, inflammation, or persistent redness. Not always. Not in everyone. But sometimes, when the body is sending early warnings. She kept reading. Chronic stress can constrict blood vessels, increase heart rate, and disrupt hormone balance. Over time, it can lead to systemic inflammation, raising cholesterol, affecting insulin, and even changing how skin heals. Skin is not just surface, it is mirror. She read studies, articles, patient stories, one after another. A woman her age who thought she had adult acne. It turned out to be a warning sign of hypertension. A man who dismissed nose redness as rosacea. It was actually a sign of vascular inflammation. A nurse who passed out at work 3 times before finally being diagnosed with early-stage arrhythmia, masked for months by fatigue. Eleanor leaned back, hand resting lightly over her chest. Her heartbeat felt quieter now, but it was still there, still working, still trying, and she had ignored it. She thought she was being strong. She thought she was being disciplined. She thought pain was weakness and slowing down was failure. She was wrong. She closed her eyes, and in that stillness, for the first time in years, she listened. Not to the world, not to the metrics, but to her body. It wasn't screaming. It never had. It had whispered. Again and again. And now she was finally listening. Eleanor didn't open her laptop for 3 days. That in itself felt like an act of rebellion. She had never gone that long without checking her inbox. Not even on vacation, not even during the flu. The little red notification bubble used to be her heartbeat. Now she couldn't look at it without flinching. The first morning after her collapse, she stayed in bed past 6 a.m. Her body stirred at its usual hour, but she didn't move. She just lay there, listening to the silence, the unfamiliar weightlessness of not being needed anywhere. It was both terrifying and tender. She made tea instead of coffee, cooked eggs instead of grabbing a bar, ate slowly, at the table, without a screen in sight. Her phone buzzed once, then again, Slack messages, a few missed calls. Calendar reminders flashing red. She turned the phone face down and walked away. But the guilt followed her, trailing behind like static. Every sip of tea tasted like defiance. Every breath of stillness came with the echo of her inner voice saying, "You're falling behind." That afternoon she opened a notebook and wrote, "If I don't push, who am I?" The question sat heavy on the page. For so long her identity had been forged in pressure, deadlines, expectations, output. She was the reliable one, the first in, the last out. Her worth measured in performance graphs and client satisfaction ratings. She didn't know who she was without that engine running, but her body knew. Her body had known for a long time. It was strange stepping outside her apartment at 2 p.m. just to walk with no purpose. She didn't wear heels, no blazer, just sneakers, leggings, a hoodie. She walked around the block like someone learning how to be human again. The air was cool, and the breeze carried the scent of pine and distant food carts. She hadn't noticed that in months. Halfway through the walk, she stopped and took a deep breath, slow, deliberate, letting the air fill every corner of her lungs. It hurt a little. The muscles were tight, unused to space. But it felt real. She walked more the next day, and the day after that, she downloaded a breathing app and set it for 2 minutes. At first, it felt silly, unproductive, a waste of 2 perfectly good minutes that could be spent on something useful. But after 3 days, she noticed something small. The bump on her nose was less red, not gone, not perfect, but softer. The swelling had eased. The tenderness was fading. She stared at her reflection and whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time she had ever thanked her body for anything. That night she sat at her desk, not to work, just to sit. The laptop was still closed. She placed her hand over the top and let it rest there. She thought about opening it, just to peek, just to catch up. Her fingers hovered above the lid, then stopped. She pulled her hand away. The noise could wait. She picked up her notebook instead. She wrote, "Maybe slowing down isn't weakness. Maybe it's wisdom." Still, the doubt crept in like fog. What if her team thought she was unreliable now? What if someone else took her project? What if she lost her edge? She didn't have answers, but she had a truth she couldn't unlearn. Her body had tried to save her, and she had ignored it. Now, in these quiet moments, it was teaching her how to return. The next morning, she drank her tea by the window. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, painting it gold. She noticed how warm it felt on her skin, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled, not for a meeting, not for approval, just for being here. The appointment was scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. Eleanor arrived 10 minutes early, without makeup. For once, she didn't bother to cover the fading redness on her nose. It was still there, less angry, more like a quiet echo of everything that had happened. The waiting room smelled like hand sanitizer and fresh print paper. A muted news channel played in the corner. Eleanor sat, hands folded in her lap, feeling strange, not anxious but alert. Like this time, she was here for the right reasons. She had chosen a new doctor, one with good reviews, someone who was reportedly known for actually listening. Eleanor didn't want to be brushed off again. She didn't want pills or platitudes. She wanted to understand. When Dr. Rivera entered the room, she was warm but not overly cheerful. Mid-40s, glasses, calm voice. She shook Eleanor's hand firmly, then sat down without reaching for her computer. "So," she said, "tell me why you're here, not just the symptoms. What made you decide to come in?" It was such a simple question, but it opened a flood. Eleanor told her everything. About the pimple, the flush, the shortness of breath, the fall, the ambulance, the handout, the guilt, the stillness. She even told her about the notebook, about how she had made a list of the things her body had tried to say. Dr. Rivera didn't interrupt. She nodded, sometimes writing, mostly listening. When Eleanor finally stopped, there was a long pause. Not awkward, just quiet. "Thank you for telling me that," the doctor said. "That's not easy. And you're right, it sounds like your body was speaking, loudly." They began the checkup. Blood pressure slightly elevated. Heart rate, fast, but steady. Weight, stable. Blood work, pending. But a basic cholesterol panel from 6 months ago showed borderline high LDL. "Nothing here is catastrophic," Dr. Rivera said, glancing at the chart. "But nothing's optimal either. Your numbers suggest your system's been under pressure for a while." Eleanor nodded. Dr. Rivera continued. "Stress impacts everything. Hormones, circulation, inflammation, even the skin, especially the skin." She leaned back slightly, thoughtful. "Most people don't realize your skin is part of your cardiovascular story. It's vascular, it's reactive, and it often gets the message first. Before your heart screams, your face whispers." That line landed hard. Eleanor blinked. "I thought it was just a pimple," she said quietly. "Sometimes your skin is just louder than your heart," Dr. Rivera replied. There was no judgment in her tone, just truth. They talked about next steps, a referral for full labs, a follow-up in 2 months. Dietary changes. Not a crash diet, just small shifts. More leafy greens, less sodium, more walks, less urgency. They also talked about something Eleanor hadn't expected, boundaries. "You've been in overdrive for a long time," Dr. Rivera said. "Not just physically, but mentally. The body doesn't know the difference between emotional danger and physical danger. Stress is stress." Eleanor felt something loosen inside her chest. "I kept thinking I wasn't doing enough," she said. "That's how burnout hides. It convinces you that rest is laziness, that pain is proof of effort. But pain is just pain, and ignoring it doesn't make you strong, it just makes you tired." By the time the appointment ended, Eleanor felt, not fixed, but seen. She stood in front of the mirror in the clinic bathroom before leaving. Her face looked softer, less sharp. There were circles under her eyes, sure, but also a quiet in them. The redness on her nose hadn't vanished, but it didn't feel like a flaw anymore. It felt like a flag. A warning. A messenger. She had hated it for showing up. Now she almost thanked it for not going away. Outside, the city buzzed with people in motion, rushing, honking, moving as if late for something that never quite arrived. But Eleanor walked slowly. For once, the world could wait. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic sunrise, no perfect playlist, no epiphany. Healing, Eleanor discovered, wasn't a finish line. It was a rhythm, quiet, repetitive, easily missed. The first week after her checkup, she set no goals, no productivity hacks. Just a promise. Listen first, act second. She began waking up without an alarm. Her body stirred naturally around 6:45 a.m., still early, but not forced. She drank warm water with lemon before checking her phone. Sometimes she didn't check it until after breakfast. That alone felt revolutionary. She swapped her usual protein bar for actual food. Oatmeal, boiled eggs, avocado toast. She wasn't trying to be wellness trendy. She was just hungry in a different way. Instead of rushing into her inbox, she sat by the window, tea in hand, and watched the world outside. Trees moved. People walked dogs. The world carried on, whether she was optimizing or not. She started journaling, not for content, not to perform, but to observe. On one page she wrote, "My body is not an obstacle to overcome. It is a partner I ignored." Some days she slipped. One night she found herself opening her work laptop at 11 p.m., eyes scanning an old deck, fingers twitching to edit. The urge to prove herself again, to feel useful, was strong. She felt it crawl up her spine like an old instinct. But this time, she noticed it. She closed the laptop without saving. She breathed deeply, hand over heart, small wins. She downloaded a guided meditation app, 5 minutes at first, breathing in, breathing out. She hated it at first. Her mind wandered, her legs itched, her thoughts screamed, but the more she showed up, the quieter it became. Some mornings she walked barefoot on the balcony just to feel something grounding, cold concrete, the edge of air, the morning sun on her eyelids. She didn't call it healing, she didn't call it anything. She just lived it. One day, almost 2 weeks in, she caught her reflection again. No makeup, loose t-shirt, hair unbrushed, and something was different. She leaned in. The bump on her nose, the stubborn swollen dot that had haunted her for weeks, was gone, completely. No redness, no scar, just smooth skin. She didn't cheer, she didn't post about it, she didn't even smile right away. She just stared, and then she reached up, slowly, and touched the spot where it had been. It felt like pressing a memory, not of pain but of warning, of a message delivered. She whispered, "I heard you." In that moment, Eleanor understood something deeper. The pimple had never been the problem. It had been the punctuation, the body's way of saying enough. And now her body was saying, "Thank you for listening." She smiled then, not the performative kind but the quiet kind, the kind that blooms from the inside, not for the world to see. Later that evening, she wrote in her journal, "Healing is not dramatic. It's daily, quiet, consistent. It looks like a walk around the block instead of a sprint. It sounds like no alarm in the morning. It feels like looking in the mirror and not flinching." She had a long way to go. Patterns don't dissolve overnight. Productivity culture still whispered to her in moments of stillness. The temptation to be better never really left. But now, she had a new definition of better, not faster, not busier, just more alive. That was enough. That was everything. If your body could speak, would you listen? Really listen, not just to the sharp pains or dramatic collapses, but to the soft whispers, the quiet nudges, the tiny betrayals of balance you've come to call normal? I didn't, not at first. I thought being tired was just part of being ambitious. I thought soreness meant I was doing something right. I believed that stress was a badge of honor, and rest a reward for those who earned it. But here's the truth. I didn't earn exhaustion. I surrendered to it. And my body noticed long before I did. It tried to tell me gently, a bit of redness, a flush of heat, a skipped heartbeat, sleepless nights, a twinge in the chest, breath that didn't come easy, a pimple that refused to heal. I called it a phase. I covered it with concealer. I blamed the weather, the air, the screen time, but deep down I knew the collapse wasn't sudden. It was cumulative. It was years of ignoring, postponing, numbing, overachieving, and pretending I could carry more than I was built to bear. I fainted during a meeting. I woke up in an ambulance, and even then I tried to explain it away. But something shifted in that moment. The way the light hit the ceiling of the ambulance, the way the paramedic said my name like I was someone worth saving. It cracked something open in me, and for the first time I asked, what if my body wasn't failing me? What if it was fighting for me? From that day I began to listen. Not perfectly, but more than before. I paid attention to the tightness in my jaw when I said yes to something I didn't want. I noticed the way my skin flushed when I felt cornered. I tracked my breath, not to control it, but to respect it. I moved slower, ate slower, thought slower, And in that space, I found myself again. Not the version I had curated for the world, not the achievement-driven, burnout-addicted, always-on woman I had built to survive, but the quiet one underneath. The one who still knew how to feel joy watching birds outside her window. The one who still cried at certain songs. The one who wasn't just a machine, but a soul in a body asking to be cared for. And the funny thing is, once I started listening, the body softened, the redness faded, the headaches eased. The breath came deeper. The mirror stopped being a battlefield. I didn't need a complete reinvention. I needed a reunion with myself. So if you're listening to this wherever you are, maybe on a walk, maybe lying awake at 2 a.m., maybe staring into a screen wondering why you feel so tired even though nothing big is wrong, I want to ask you something. What has your body been trying to say that your mind keeps overriding? Is it the tension in your shoulders, the anxiety before meetings, the lump in your throat when you force a smile, the skin flare-up that never seems to heal? None of those things are random. Your body is your oldest companion. It remembers every late night, every skipped meal, every moment you chose should over need. And still, it hasn't given up on you. It whispers, it waits. And sometimes when you ignore it long enough, it roars. But even then, it's not punishing you. It's protecting you. All it wants is to be heard. So today, I invite you, gently, without judgment, to ask yourself, if my body could speak, what would it say? And even more importantly, am I ready to listen? Take a breath, not the shallow kind, the kind that fills you like a second chance. Place your hand over your chest. Feel that? That's your heart. Still here, still trying, still loving you. Even when you forget to love it back, that's where healing begins. Not in hospitals, not in prescriptions, not in perfection, but in attention, in choosing, moment by moment, to honor the body that carries you. I don't have all the answers. I still stumble. I still forget. But now, I return faster. I apologize to myself more. I treat my body like a friend, not a problem. And every day, I get a little better at hearing what I once silenced. So if you see a pimple that won't go away, or feel tired for no reason, or find yourself breathless walking up the stairs, don't shrug it off. Don't shame it. Don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Ask it what it needs. And then, if you can, give it. You don't need to change your life overnight. You just need to begin the conversation, one breath at a time.
Thank you for staying until the end with Return to Life. If you found a sense of connection or a small spark of hope, carry it with you as you return to everyday life. We look forward to seeing you in the stories ahead.